Hello. The title of the talk today is The Peace of God. But before I really get into the talk, I'd like to share with you this story that I read recently. So the airplane was full of people, and they were just getting ready to take off. The atmosphere on the plane was so peaceful. Everyone was just ready to begin the flight. And then out of nowhere, a little boy just begins screaming at the top of his lungs, arguing with his mother, and just will not stop. She's trying everything she can do to get the little boy to be quiet, but he just gets louder and louder. And about this time, a general from the Air Force gets up from the back of the plane and begins to walk forward. And you can see his uniform is covered with medals and awards. And yet, surely enough, there's that rank of general. You can see the stars on his shoulders. And he reaches the seat where the little boy is still throwing his tantrum. And he bends over and whispers something in the boy's ear. Immediately, the screaming and the tantrum stops. The little boy straightens up in his seat and buckles his seatbelt. And there is peace once again. The general turns around and begins to walk back towards his seat. And the stewardess at this time stops him and says, "I hope you don't mind me asking, but I'd really like to know, what was it that you told that young man that changed him around and got him to sit quietly in his seat?" And the general, he just paused for a moment. He says, "I showed him all of my medals and my awards and my rank and told him that I was a general and that entitled me to throw one person off the plane with every flight." And that's all I said. So, what does it take to bring about the peace of God? What is the peace of God? And how do we know if our mental state is a reflection of the peace of God? Everything in our spiritual work begins with a practice of self-awareness. We can have as many tools in our spiritual toolbox as there are tools in the Lowe's or the Home Depot. And none of them do us any good if we're not aware of our current mental state. So I could almost change the title of this talk. Instead of being the peace of God, to being, where am I? Because that's the question I would like you to ask yourself right now, where you're sitting in this moment. Where am I? And to help get an answer to that question, I'm not asking you to refer to your mapping application on your phone, because that's not going to be very helpful. Because we're talking about, where am I in my inner space? And so let's begin by making a model. We like models when we're talking about things that are just really hard to describe. And so we just make an approximation that's useful for us. And let's begin this approximation by drawing a horizontal line. I'm going to picture that line being right below my chin, so it's really easy for me to know where it is as we talk. And the question, where am I, can be answered by either saying I am above this line or I am below that line. So there's really only two answers to the question, where am I? I'm either above the line, in which case I'm feeling a little curious about life. I'm not really attached to any outcome, and I really want to learn and grow. Or I might be below the line, in which case I'm probably a little bit defensive. I'm not as open to what might be coming, and in fact, I'm very much attached to my story, and I know that I'm right. And that's what really matters. So I want to characterize some of the other things. What does it look like whenever I find, to describe myself as being below the line? And this is a helpful exercise as we look at ourselves, not so much as we look out there at other people. But where am I right now? If I'm below the line, then I'm likely feeling that I lack something. That something might be money. It might be time. I just don't have enough time. I don't have enough energy. I'm just so tired. I lack energy. I might be lacking in space. This place just doesn't give me enough room to do what I need to do. Or love. There just might not be enough love in my life. I'm feeling so alone right now. So there's all these feelings of lack. And they begin to become a burden on us, dragging us down. You can picture a person hunched over with a large boulder of all of this burden on their back. And they're just barely making it along in their life. Other things that are characteristic of being below the line can be things like, I feel threatened. Someone is threatening my control of the situation. Someone is threatening my security. And it's about how I perceive this. It's not so much the reality of the threat, but my perception of a threat. I feel like someone is attacking me because they don't agree with me. This feeling can lead to all kinds of things, from a judgment outlook, from seeing that others, and from this looking at others and and judging where they're at. It can lead to gossip. These things that aren't really helpful. And then contrast that to when I feel above the line, what I'm feeling above the line. And I'd like to characterize that by reading a scripture to you. This comes from the book of Philippians chapter 4 and verse 7, only one verse. So I'm reading from the Lamsa translation, the book of Philippians chapter 4 and verse 7. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Jesus Christ. And this peace of God is what we're talking about when we can find ourselves above the line. This state of openness, this state of creativity, this state of not being attached to what is right, but instead of being attached to finding the truth and learning, finding and exploring. There's a sense of play that comes from being above the line, that comes into our consciousness as we find ourselves above the line, as opposed to below the line. This feeling that it's all right. That we can go ahead and we can try things out. And that's okay if it doesn't work out the way we thought it did. We learned something new, and now we can try something else. Just this idea that things are brighter and that everything is okay. And isn't that the peace of God? But it's really easy to bring ourselves to that state that's below the line. It's really a survival tactic that we learned as our evolution as human beings. When we first began to walk upright, we were vulnerable. There were a lot of things in the world that would be just ready to jump out on us and end our life. And so we had to be really aware. And we had to be ready to either freeze so that no one would know we're there, or run, or turn and defend ourselves. It's a state of mind that psychologists call fight or flight mode. And it's very much related to the feelings and this being below the line. But you see, in this modern society, it's not so often that we are experiencing these dangers that we did as we were evolving as a human race. Though sometimes it is valid. So we don't want to kill it, but we want to be aware of where we are in any given moment, whether we're above the line or below the line. Because you see, if we're below the line because of some perceived attack on our sense of being right, then is this really a helpful state? When we're attached more to being right than to discovering the truth? But again, we do come by it honestly. So we shouldn't attack ourselves for it, right? Should. There's that should word again. But really, it's okay. All we got to do is shift our consciousness and we're back above the line again. Ready to be in that creative mode, innovative mode, ready to find just the right solution. But as long as we're below the line, we're completely blocking that flow, that guidance that comes from being in the peace of God. And it really is about this awareness. Because once we know where we're at, then we have spiritual tools that can help us transform our consciousness by the renewal of our mind. So I invite you in this right now moment to ask yourself, where am I? Where am I? And then as you go through your week, be aware and ask yourself several times a day, maybe even several times in one conversation, where am I? I am very grateful to be able to present this talk to you through the technology that's available to us. I would like you to know that I am currently quarantined because I tested positive for the COVID-19 virus. But I am feeling so much better. Better than I did 2 days ago. And this entire experience is so much better than what I experienced the last time I had the COVID a couple of years ago or a year and a half ago, whatever it was. So I thank you for your attention. I hope you are having a wonderful day because it's a beautiful day in my consciousness. And remember the invitation to ask yourself, where am I? Right now. Because it does work if you work it. Thank you very much.